Can I firstly thank you for your kind introductions, and can I begin by acknowledging the traditional owners of the land on which we meet here today and pay my respects to their elders past and present and any elders who may be here today. And I also acknowledge Steve Martin and Stephen Spargo from CEDA, Neil Colson, the Victorian Skills Commissioner, Rod Cam, and I think Mel Comedes is here from ACPET, Sue Christopher, the Board Chair of ACFI, Andrew Williamson, CEO Victorian Tape Association, Luke Hilakari, Trades Hall, Victorian Trades Hall Council, Meredith Pearce from the AEU, TAFE CEOs, university heads, industry alumni, panel members Sarah Kaplan and Nick Dickinson from Metro Trains. And can I just say, Nick was at the awards on Friday night, the training awards, the gala event for training and vocational education in Victoria. And Metro won not just the Large Employer of the Year award, but they also won the Victorian Employer Award for Apprentice Development. Nick was on stage more than I was. Let's have a round of applause for Metro, please. Fantastic effort when we have a look at our, what's happening with transport in Victoria and the opportunities to drive a whole new generation of apprentices and tradespeople. It's good to see that Metro are doing their bit, and I just want to acknowledge that, Nick. Now, firstly, can I begin? I'll talk a little bit about the reform and what led up to it. We launched on Friday. Some of you here, TAFE's chairs, have probably heard it. It's about the second time or third time now, but nevertheless, we'll see if I'm consistent, eh? You can score me afterwards. The CEDA report, let's start with that. VET Securing Skills for Growth. I had a good read of it. It covers a whole range of important issues which impact on the delivery of VET here in Victoria and Australia. And in summary, it's a call to action. It's a call that says we need to understand vocational education and training play an absolutely critical role in equipping our economy for the skills of tomorrow, in having a workforce development process here in this country that leads to meeting the needs of industry, not just now, but in the future. It acknowledges also, as Stephen said, that unfortunately, whilst the public debate at a national level tends to have focused on university funding, on research and on schools, that there hasn't been enough thought about vocational education and training. And yet it's in this arena where pathways to further study are, but also where the future of our industry, the strength of employers, our competitive advantage, all plays a part. What the report, for those of you who just read the title, talks about specifically better aligning qualifications and training to industry skill needs, creating high quality, well-funded, strong TAFE system, committing to quality training, not tick and flick, stuff that doesn't lead to any real skills, supporting students to access the right training at the right level for the jobs they need, both today and tomorrow, and recognising the important role of industry and fostering partnerships in innovation between workforce and providers. No-brainers, really, all of us should know that, but unfortunately for too long our system hasn't been focused on those key areas, and this report is a vital report in terms of setting the new parameters. Well, the Victorian Government agrees. We agree wholeheartedly. We agree that we need high quality training. We agree that we need that partnerships with industry around what those skills should be. We agree that we need high quality training and skills to grow productivity in our workforce and to grow jobs. And on Friday, that's why we announced Skills First, which hits all of those targets in the CEDA report, but also one that is a new approach, completely new funded approach for training and for TAFE in this state. Can I say that, when we came to office in November 2014, the headlines weren't in fact about the university funding or even really Gonski. You know what they were about? They were about the demise of training in this state, about a training system that was going down the gurgler. And this was noted in the CEDA report. It wasn't just, party politics. I think most observers actually acknowledge this. CEDA put it well. We had a system where policy changes under the previous government had encouraged unscrupulous training providers to milk every cent they could out of the public purse. Quality concerns were rife, with training out the back of a ute, qualifications that meant nothing, and students being disillusioned by being basically conned. We had major declines in training right across various regional areas, and particularly in areas where the skills they needed for the jobs in those areas simply weren't being provided. We had a major mismatch between training programs on offer and job market needs. And I can tell you that, when I came in, I asked for a whole look at where we were funding, and we were funding programs where we were training 1,000 to 1 in terms of the number of people doing the training to how many jobs that were available. It was crazy, really crazy use of public money. In simple, the report said that industries and student needs weren't being met and confidence was low. And the end result's been a drop-off in training, a drop-off in confidence, a drop-off in perceptions about the value of training in this state. And that's something that I intend to tackle head-on, and we are tackling head-on. For the past 18 months, we've been getting ready for a new training system. We've been strengthening our TAFEs, which were basically just focusing on keeping their doors open, not on their industry, not on their communities, not on new industries and new ventures, but just keeping their doors open. Slashing 3,000 staff, closing campuses, cutting courses to the bare minimum, not because the courses weren't valuable, but because they couldn't afford to run them. So we kicked in with our $320 million TAFE Rescue Fund. We came back again with $50 million for TAFE Back to Work Fund, new programs, working with industry about new training approaches, $50 million to boost apprenticeships in TAFEs. And that has strengthened them. They went from something like a $55 million loss at the end of 2014 to a $25 million profit at the end of 2015, a major turnaround of something like 70-something million. We also opened 16 skills and job centres because it seemed to me that, there's something wrong if you've got to kind of go through a TAFE reception, get into a department, whether you're a student or an employer looking to get their skill needs met, or a student looking to get a chance for a job, and you wind your way through, find a lecturer or find a trainer that isn't teaching to talk about what your needs are. So we set up one-stop shops, 16 of them right across the state, where anyone could walk in, have a skill assessment, be assessed if you're a student, work out the sort of courses you want, sign up then and there, and talk about also where that would lead you. But if you're an employer, you could come in there and say, these are my issues, what can you do for me? And they could actually sign up apprentices, work out training needs, etc. 16 one-stop shops across the state. We put in payroll tax exemptions for out-of-trade apprentices. There's nothing worse than for a young apprentice that, might have done a couple of years, they need one more year, their company has a bit of hard time, and, they're out there on the dole queue. So we put in tax incentives for employers to take them up. Importantly, we implemented a 10% apprenticeship traineeship guarantee on all major government projects. Projects of $20 million. A lot of money, not a lot when it comes to a $6 billion build. And that's 10% of the workforce of every government major project, every project over 20 million, that's many in cases schools, that will have 10% of their workforce will be mandated apprentices or trainees. That is a pipeline for infrastructure, using our infrastructure pipeline for our workforce of the future, and I think it's already exceeding its targets. We also importantly had the biggest crackdown on dodgy providers this country's seen. We kicked in an extra $9 million for auditing. We've reclaimed something like $80 million since November 2014 when we were elected. We've, in the last 12 months, 40-something million has been identified. Money back that taxpayer has either paid out or was going to, which we withheld, for training that wasn't any good. It's been a major crackdown. I acknowledge the support of RodCam and ACPET, the private training providers in that crackdown. They, like everybody else, whether you're public or private providers, you want to make sure that good quality training provision that meets industry's needs are protected from cutthroat, tick and flick providers out the back of a ute that undercut your viability because they're offering no-cost training, a couple of weeks, for a year's worth of training that means nothing, but sucks students in, They draw them in, they think, this is great, I can be a manager in no time. So that's been the biggest crackdown. We've changed the contract system, we've put more accountability into it, we've stopped the rotating doors of, a dodgy provider then starting up a new company. Major crackdown on quality in this state, and it's something that ought to happen nationally. We've also looked at ways we can engage industry better. So we've set up the Office of the Skills Commissioner. We've got a whole new industry engagement framework with new industry advisory groups, with task forces around key future industry needs, regional task force to provide advice to government, not as it was before they were all slashed and burnt by previous administration, but to fit into a new contract system and how we engage and how we spend that $1.2 billion of government funding on training. All of that led to Friday's announcement. Massive consultation under the McKinsey Vet Review. Massive consultation around the funded skills list. Led to 18 months of change. I wanted to make sure we got the system. We didn't just come in and suddenly change things, turmoil. 18 months to prepare the sector, major sector for industries in this state's economic prosperity, send all the signals, strengthen the institutions so that we could be in a good space to implement a new training system. And that new system is called Skills First. It's a commitment to a prosperous vet sector. It's a commitment to a contestable training system, but one that's managed much better when it comes to government funding and managed in a way that meets industry, student and community needs. That's the focus of the funding system. As well, as CEDA said, we wanted to recognise that TAFEs, major political issue, that's for sure in the last election, but TAFEs provide a whole broad band of skills outside of training. They work in communities, they have major infrastructure costs, major facilities that are used by all sorts of groups in the communities. We wanted to make sure they were viable, we want them productive, we want them innovative, but we wanted to make sure that they were a strong part of our government funded system. Strong partners, government's partners in the new system. So as part of that guarantee, we've got separate funding. We've restored funding for TAFEs of an extra $114 million in 2017 on top of the contestable funding so that they can, for their infrastructure costs, for their extra costs they undertake. We've also put in $50 million for community service because we recognise that, governments have an obligation to communities over and above what we expect from a private provider. We expect private providers to be contracted to provide high quality skills that industry needs, and that's fabulous. But we expect TAFEs a bit more. We expect them to help those kids that need a bit of extra support, those communities that need a bit of extra support. So we're providing an extra $15 million. And to make sure that money's well spent, this extra money is well spent, we're going to put in $10 million around building organisational capability so that they are truly innovative, they are truly meeting the needs of their communities. That was the first plank in Skills First. Contestable training system, as I say, that's where the bulk of the money will be. But it's also linked to new contracts, new accountability, industry information about what we need. It's a contestable system that will support high quality providers, whether public or private. Contestable system where we're getting rid of the shysters, where we're no longer prepared to say, we're going to fund you to do tick and flick training, which is meaningless, short course delivery, which is meaningless, courses where there's simply no jobs or no interest or no need for. So the whole contestable training system will be more managed, but if you've got a good training product, if your training leads to a job, whether you're public or private, you'll be very, very happy in Victoria. As part of that, we've also introduced a brand new course list. Course list, we had 1,500 previously, we're down to 1,000, government-funded course list. When I looked at that list, there were courses like sugar cane refining. Not too many sugar cane refineries in Victoria, I can assure you, and a range of other subjects. So we've had a look at that. We've consulted with the industry and they've said some of the lower level qualifications simply aren't relevant anymore. So we've scrapped them. So we've got a whole new funded course list, but more importantly, we've had a process where we look at what's it cost to deliver that course properly. Now, some courses previously were being funded at $1.50 an hour. Tell me how you can do any decent training for that. You can't. So we've lifted those training rates. We've got accountability in there, but we've lifted what we pay for training at a rate that is that's closely aligned to what we think it should cost to do that quality training. So contracts, more accountability for what the training is, money to make sure you can do that training. The two link closely together. We've also, as well as some mainstream funding, one of the problems I had was, how do we meet kind of really emerging needs if you've just got one bucket of funds? So we've introduced 3 new buckets of funds. One around disadvantaged learners, one around workforce innovation and partnerships, and one around regional skill needs. And I'll just spend a little bit of time on that. The first one, disadvantaged workers. Well, in the old days, you left school, maybe year 9 or form 3, and it depends how old you are in the room, and you did an apprenticeship. That's all pretty well, but nowadays, when you go round and you have a look at these apprenticeships, whether they're in an automotive component or a whole heap of industries, they are high-skilled jobs. You've got to have great reading and numeracy skills. You've got to understand technical details. So sometimes young people need a bit more before they can start an apprenticeship or a traineeship. So we know that in Victoria there's something like 40,000 young people who aren't in work or aren't studying. We know that 70% of young people who are entering into jobs today will be radically impacted by automation. I said earlier, I'm the Corrections Minister. I can tell you that 90% of all people in our prisons, 6,500 of them, never finish school. It's a worrying statistic. Think about that. 90% of all the prisoners in our prison never finish school. There is a direct link between school attainment, educational attainment, and our prison population. The CEDA report says that nationally there's 200,000 fewer people participating in government-funded training in 2015, with the largest decline in those aged 15 to 19. That's early school leavers. Kids that leave school, not only aren't they at school, not only aren't they in a job, but they're not taking up training because it's all too hard or they need extra support. So for disadvantaged learners, we've got a $20 million funding stream for 2017 to support those students with extra needs. Now, we started this year with what's called Reconnect program, and this fund works with not-for-profits basically, and we identify the kids, help them with literacy, numeracy, counselling, health, welfare, sometimes accommodation, getting them ready and signing them up to a pathway to an apprenticeship or traineeship. That $20 million will help another just under 3,500 students next year. Second funding stream is what's called the Regional and Specialist Training Fund. So we know that even no matter how you structure your subsidies, there's going to be lots of parts of Victoria where industry needs some skilled workers, but there's not enough of them to justify a whole course. And what happens is young people leave those towns, come to the city to do their training, and often never go back. The other problem is that sometimes there are niche industries that a whole heap of other big industries rely on, but for a training provider, it's just not worth doing. The money isn't there for those little niche industries, but those niche industries. Look at upholstery training. Vital in the caravan industry, the shipbuilding, the car building, but there aren't that many upholstering apprentices needed right across Victoria. Don't have it. It puts a marker. They need to bring in skilled workers, and they think, well, what else do we need to do? So we've got a regional and specialist training fund, $30 million to provide funding under contracts in those niche areas and for those communities that need a bit of extra money to get the skill needs in their communities. And the third fund that we're doing, which is of interest to everyone here, is the Workforce Training and Innovation Fund. Australia's got a great system. I'm also the Minister for International Education. As I go round to our markets, international education's worth $5.5 billion to Victoria. We've got about 180,000 students here every year. Big industry, But as you go around, that everyone acknowledges our national competencies are a great part of our system, and they are. National qualifications that are available around the country. But you know, when we look at the industry input into those, I have to tell you, our national industry advisory arrangements, they're convoluted and complex. I don't know about other people here, but I find it difficult even getting my head around them, how they work. We also know that for new training packages, it sometimes takes years. And yet industries are evolving very quickly and moving very quickly. We know manufacturing is shifting to higher technology. We've got a new knowledge base. There are whole new approaches in construction, a whole heap of core businesses. They're moving quickly to be competitive. Our training system still has skills that don't meet that change. So we're implementing here with Skills First a $40 million fund for next year, and it'll keep going as the years go through, to develop new training products, whole new qualifications quickly and appropriately for industry, supporting new approaches to training that value add and help with businesses, that improve productivity for businesses. And we're also, for the first time, funding out of this research for new and innovative niche and emerging industries, research into what the workforce needs will be in the future. $40 million to keep our training system at the heart of industry's workforce needs in the future, to keep our industries competitive because we've got high quality, productivity adding workforce. That fund, industry must be partners with it. So it'll be a training provider or an industry association, must be partners, and we will be seeking contributions from industry as part of that, up to $1 million in funding per project. It's not small business, but it's a vital thing, and that'll put us above every other state in this country. Can I say finally that industry engagement isn't just about a $40 million fund. It's about truly listening, engaging and having the structures in place to get the information we need to feed it into our training system, to feed it into our contracts. So that's why we've got the Skills Commissioner. That's why we're setting up a new industry engagement framework with regional task force and a whole range of others. We also survey 300,000 students and employers every year about how they went with their training. Now that just doesn't tell us about what the needs are or what the experiences are. All of this for the first time is going to be factored into our contracts. So if we've got surveys that say X training provider or TAFE, it was rubbish, it was hopeless, we will factor that in and we'll talk to them, we'll go and audit so that we can use the whole process, not just to make sure we're close to what industry needs in training, that our contracts meet industry's needs, but that the way the training's done and the outcomes of it are productive for the spend of government taxpayers' dollars. I think it's an exciting change. It all works together. It's a PS product. It also links, of course, with the training system, with our major priorities for government. We want to make sure training drives economic growth. Our infrastructure commitments, I mentioned Metro Rail Tunnel, level crossing removal projects, the rollout of the National Disability Scheme, the Royal Commission of Family Violence. These will all factor in as core parts of what we fund for training to get our society in better shape. The 10% apprentice guarantee on major projects, I think we haven't had that in place that long, but we've already got 400 apprentices out there learning new skills as part of that scheme. And just to finish off, finally, as we've heard earlier, and as everyone in this room knows, you can't do anything unless you've got quality training. Training that gives a certificate where the person has the skills and the employer's confident they can take them on. They know that certificate means something, they know the skills they've got, they can put them into their workforce and be productive from day one. So we're keeping going with the quality training. We're going to keep the major effort up on crackdown. We've got much stronger contracts, much stronger accountability. Can I say that, whilst we have that, I also make it be clear I'm flexible. I also know that, what often when governments talk about that sort of thing, it means a lot of paperwork and a lot of administrative work. And that's true. I want to be flexible though. As we start cracking down, as we start getting our system in much better shape and the providers we have are genuine quality, and I know that ACPET supporters in this area doing great measures with their own members in terms of quality underpinning their own membership, we will reduce that burden. But if any aspect of the system isn't working, I can give you a guarantee. I won't be like past ministers where we stick doggedly, to what we said we'd do and never admit we got it wrong. If we get it wrong, we'll change it. And we'll keep changing it until we get it right. Because training and skills and workforce development in this state are far too important to be stubborn on political points. We're determined to get a training system that's the best in the country, that leads our industries and makes sure that our future generations have strong economic growth because they've got a great workforce. I'll finish with one small point. Whilst we're doing this, Stephen commented about national partnership and vet fee help debacle. Reform's been tough, but it's been tougher because running concurrently with all the reforms we're making is this absolute debacle of vet fee help, where billions of dollars of taxpayers' funding is going to dodgy providers or providers that aren't delivering jobs, outcomes, completions, all the things we expect from the public purse. It's been difficult. I think we had 4 different federal ministers for vocational education and training in the space of a few years. We also have a national partnership arrangements in place. About $150 million we get annually is in jeopardy from June next year. Now, this is important. They're 2 important things. We haven't been too out there in terms of national partnerships. Stephen said that we haven't heard much about it. Well, we've had an election. This is an important issue. The election's over. The government's elected to run. We want to have an agreement with the federal government that's in tune with what we're doing. Developing high-quality training system to meet the needs of industries, students and communities, creating jobs, creating productivity, creating prosperity. So I can assure you that on the issue of vet fee help, I shall continue to plague the federal government to reform that system and get it right. And on the issue of national partnerships, well, we're now getting to deadline time. We've tried to get it on the agenda, haven't been able to have discussions. We've got a new government, we've got a new system here in Victoria, and it's time that we sat down and had some proper discussions around how the Commonwealth is going to play their part in skill development in this state. We'll be pursuing that vigorously. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for your time.